Hi, I'm Ross Hedifin from Beach Patrol Australia. We're a volunteer group picking up plastic off the beaches around Port Phillip Bay.
Okay. And Ramona?
And Ramona Hedifin, co-partner in picking up rubbish off the beaches and the streets now as well.
Very good. So just to get a little bit of background about your life.
We moved here to come to work 23 years ago, and about 8 years ago we left Australia for a couple of years to go volunteer in Tanzania to help with getting water wells for remote villages, and that's where we kind of first had our eyes open to the problem of single-use plastic pollution.
So when we were in Tanzania, we started to see the problem of disposable single-use plastic. They have no infrastructure over there to handle waste at all, so it was much...
What were you doing in Tanzania? I think you told me before.
So yeah, we were volunteering. We'd gone over with VSA, which is the New Zealand equivalent of Australian Volunteers International.
Oh, good.
And we were working in East Africa, in Tanzania, working in rural villages, helping to source water, groundwater, and then putting hand pumps on.
That's really surprising to me, because I would have thought in Africa, because you know they're so out in the nature and everything, that wouldn't they be more sort of nature conscious? Where would all their plastics come from? The same as us?
The West.
Same as us. The West is trying to sell
Yeah.
plastic as much as they can into those people. But
Yeah.
the single-use disposable items, the two in particular we're talking about here is water bottles and plastic bags. Those are the ones that have become a real problem for the locals in Tanzania, because they have never had an education to know what plastic is and how it does or does not break down. They have no infrastructure to collect any waste, so it's up to everybody to dispose of their own waste, and you throw a plastic bottle on the ground and it's just going to blow away and end up somewhere and never going away.
In their oceans and in their thing. So they don't have any idea about recycling or stuff like that. So where does their stuff end up? Just everywhere?
Everywhere. They'll burn it every now and again in their backyard, or it'll flow down into a river and get washed out of sight, out of mind.
That's not really good, is it?
No. You know, even here, once you throw a plastic bottle out into your recycle bin, it's gone and you think it's all taken care of.
But also the thing where China didn't want to take our rubbish anymore and things like that. The mind boggles. I said, well, where is it going now? What are they doing with it now? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Australia
Yep.
has a big problem. They knew it was coming for years, but they decided not to do anything about it until the 1st of January this year, when the Chinese sword came into action, and now we're really scrambling what to do with our plastic waste. The only thing we can do with it in the foreseeable future is to put it in a landfill to get it out of sight. But that's a huge loss of resources that we need to recover, could use in something else, but it's going to take 5 or 10 years to get infrastructure in place to make any of that worthwhile again.
So so this inspired you when you saw the problem there, and then you wondered how big the problem was here, and how did you start the beach patrol, or was it already started?
Well, it was already started. Interesting, when we left Tanzania, this was back in 2010, we actually went to Florida to work with a company that we knew to start looking at making plastic landfill biodegradable, which is different than some other degradable words. We'll talk about that in a minute. But we were on the Atlantic Ocean shore, and we walk every morning and go, oh my gosh, look at all this rubbish in the ocean. We were trying to take just a walk, and we ended up picking rubbish along the ocean every morning. And we would say to people...
It's so distressing to you.
Very
like
distressing.
It all
just washed up constantly.
Washed up on the...
And we said to people, oh, we live in Melbourne. It's very clean in Melbourne. You wouldn't see this in Melbourne. And we get back to Melbourne and went, oh.
It's everywhere.
It's here too. And I think part of the issue is, again, if you're walking just in Port Phillip Bay, if you're walking on the foreshore, you're not right on the water's edge, so you don't see it. It's not always on all of the sand, but it's right where the tide comes in a lot of instances.
And sometimes it washes behind the rocks and under the...
Gets caught in rock groins.
Isn't it?
Exactly.
So in all nooks and crannies where you don't see it,
It's
and
hidden.
then it washes out again when the tide goes out, isn't it? And when the tide comes in.
Yeah, so every high tide dumps a fresh load of plastic waste onto the shoreline of the beaches around Port Phillip Bay. A lot of it is sourced from in the city and it comes down the Yarra River, and there's a few other bigger rivers that dump their plastic waste into the Port Phillip Bay. But by far,
Can anyone join your group? And
Yeah.
What do you do?
So-
Like, do you go out every day? Do you go out every week? How does it work?
Yeah, so once we realized there was a problem in Melbourne, we thought, what do we do? And we actually, within the first week or so, we saw this group of people on the beach in t-shirts like this, but red. We went up to him, had a chat, and he said, oh, the gentleman that started the group, name is Guy, and he started the group back in 2009. He was just tired of having a dirty beach for his kids to try to play on. So then we went a little bit further and found another group in Port Melbourne that had only started, ironically, about 2 months before we'd gotten back to Australia. And that's 3207, which is the Port Melbourne group. That group was started by a gentleman named Tom, who would be out for a run and thought, what is all this on the beach? So the volunteer group had started back in 2009.
The thing is, I think people think
And-
someone else will do it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But who else
And
is
this
going to
was,
do
we're
it?
just
Someone's
going to
gotta
take
do it.
control of our community. Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
someone's got to do it. Like, you know, you always think, oh, someone else will do it, but if nobody does it,
well, a lot of people,
You were the change. you
a lot of
wanna
people
be.
think it's the council's responsibility to pick up trash, and in fact, it's not the council's responsibility. The council do it, and they spend a lot of ratepayers' money doing it, but the council is not tasked to pick up litter off the beaches. It's up to the community.
they just do a general clean-up is what
Yeah.
from what I understand.
Waste, pick up bins, the curbside bins,
Yes,
and
just
recycle and
maintenance,
rubbish.
Just maintenance of the areas and
Right.
things
Yeah.
like that.
Mm.
So Ross,
So-
you're a mechanical engineer. How, from an engineering perspective, how can this ultimately be solved? I mean, people they're always going to drink those water bottles, and they seem to be making them cheaper and cheaper all the time. I hear them crinkling all the time. What's the answer? Re-education or
So
different
this-
plastics, or what's the answer?